In this video, I'm going to design and build a modular ejection seat handle system for my cockpit. And as always, the plans will be available for free to download. So, I had an ejection seat handle in my previous setup. There's actually a build video of that project too on this channel. But I need a new one for this cockpit, and I finally got around with building this. I think I had these designs ready for almost 2 years, but for some reason just haven't gotten into this project. Since I'm using 2 different joysticks with different games, I made this build somewhat modular. Not something I can change on the fly, but a design where I can use standardized internals for different joystick bases. I have designs ready for old Virpil WarBRD base and Winwing Orion 1 base. Virpil variant might work with newer bases too, but I don't have them, so I can't guarantee that. But if you like the mechanism, feel free to make this work with other joysticks too, or ask the manufacturers to send me their joysticks. I'll have the STL files available for download, and I will also add the measurements of the internal mechanism for easier referencing. But anyway, once the design was ready, it was time to print this thing. And with this thing ready, it's time to jump into the basement and start assembly. Before getting into assembly, this is what you need to build your own, besides the printed parts. USB joystick interface like Arduino or Leo Bodnar. Micro switch with a roller. This is approximately 20 by 10 mm and 6 mm thick, with distance between the holes at 11 mm. Perhaps this is some sort of standard. 6 M3 threaded inserts, 6 M3 countersunk screws, 4 of them about 16 mm and 2 30 mm, just about. 2 M2 countersunk screws, about 15 mm, and nuts, or just glue to keep the switch in place. I didn't have the right size available, so I just cut this. Wires, a magnet for the handle, small steel plate or another magnet to keep the handle in place, some rope or something for the handle. I think it's legally required to be black and yellow, or the Simpit police will come after you. And glue. I used super glue and some epoxy, but I'll have the list in the video description. The mechanism is quite simple. Micro switch will be attached to the case, usually set up as normally closed, meaning the circuit is closed when it isn't pushed down. So opposite what you normally would have with the button. There are usually pins named NC and NO in the micro switch, so select the NC. When the handle is in place, the circuit is open, and when you pull the handle off, it closes the circuit, aka pushes the button down from PC's perspective. The handle is kept in place with the 5 by 3 mm magnet in the handle and a 3 mm thick steel plate or 2 magnets, so you can vary the strength you need to pull the handle with different strength magnets. On the hindsight, probably 2 magnets would be better. The case will be attached to shell that is designed to fit in the joystick's base. It required few iterations to get the coil radius right, though Virpil had better diagrams available. The hole for the case is meant to be 50 by 20 mm, while the case itself is 0.2 mm smaller to add some tolerance, and the height is 40 mm. There is a small risk that if you push the handle forward too hard, you might bend the plate. I made it a bit stronger, but this is something I'll just have to wait and see. If necessary, I can change the design so that it will attach also to the joystick's bottom. I started the assembly by gluing the steel plate in the bottom of the handle, well, since the glue requires some time to cure, and then the threaded inserts. You could get specific solder heads and build a trick for this, but this has been good enough for me, and it's quite satisfying. As I mentioned before, I'm configuring the micro switch to work as normally closed. Also, here's my new fume extraction system in use. For some time I thought I completely sucked at soldering, but then I realized that I just sucked at the maintenance. I tend to destroy my soldering heads constantly, but this one will get the job done. Also, make sure you'll route the cables in a way that the micro switch fits inside the case. Next, I pulled the wires out and attached the micro switch in place with the M2 screws. You could probably use glue here if you don't have any suitable screws at hand. At this point, I also recommend adding some sort of strain relief so you won't accidentally pull the wires off. I ended up using just hot glue. Not perfect, but good enough. And it really doesn't hurt to test that everything is working before continuing with the assembly. And finally, I just added the cover in place, pulled the wires through the shell, and attached the case in place with 2 screws through the bottom. When attaching this into my joystick's base, I just used the base's own screws. And the same design principle worked as well with the Winwing's Orion 1 base. So just basically take the 2 screws off, add the case, and then add the screws back in. You'll also need to assemble the handle. As you might have realized, the small support piece was an afterthought, but it works. I ended up using some epoxy to attach the rope, and I had this done earlier so the epoxy would be dry. Then just some extra black electric tape for the looks. Finished piece looks nice enough, though perhaps a bit stiffer rope would have been good. Since I need to be able to switch the joysticks, I'll just route this cable next to my US socket and add a connector there. Also, something I learned the hard way. These crimpers are damn near mandatory if you're using more stuff that has these DuPont connectors. This wire is a bit too thick for the connectors, but it'll work. Okay, and now that this thing is actually ready, I think it's time to head upstairs and continue with the rest of the assembly. And behind this drawer is where you can actually find my setup and my office space here. Now all you need to do is attach the wires to the USB board of your choice and you're good to go. I'm just using my Leo Bodnar here since I already have that in place on the right side panel. And then just a quick test with the joystick gremlin, and also I'm creating a macro, so when I yank the handle off, it sends something like 1 second push button to the game through VJoy, and it doesn't keep the button pushed all the time. And here's the ejection seat handle in action with Star Citizen. Link to the 3D models in the comments. I hope you found this useful. Thanks for watching and hope to see you next time.